Hey everybody, this is Randy Jocelyn. I'm going to take over. I'm actually presenting the screen from my computer. Are you guys
Well, Randy, I think we might not be seeing your screen share.
okay? Well, I will get that fixed if I need to. I think there we go. So everybody, sorry, you guys should be seeing a bulk order returns screen on your screen now. I apologize for that. We have this tool available. Here's some links for you. Matthew, if you can give me a thumbs up on your video if you're seeing this, awesome. All right, and everybody, if you do have a question, what Bill was saying, there's the Q&A section on the screen. You can just go ahead and answer some Q&As. We have an amazing group of people here from the Gateway team that are monitoring the questions, so give us a shout out if you have any question at any time. This webinar is 60 minutes in length. We did go a little bit over last week, and we're going to do our best to try to keep it close to 60. However, if the content is continuing and if you're willing to stick with us and you have more questions, we'll stay on as long as you need to, but the target here is to keep this about an hour. It will be a discussion format with some presentation of best practices. There will be some Galaxy training involved in this session, so if you are not a user of Galaxy's ticketing system, Gateway Ticketing Systems Galaxy product, we'll do our best to kind of talk apples to apples with whatever system you might be using. So just to let you know, we will take a little deeper dive into our product to discuss how you might manage capacity at your attraction. If you haven't joined any of our community's webinars yet, here's a QR code and a link to them at gatewayticketing.com community. So we definitely invite you to check out some of those webinars so you can see what we've been talking about the last 4 or 5 weeks. This is our 5th webinar, Reopening Strategies and Transitioning to a Capacity Managed Attraction. You will notice that we were going to do another session next week that was kind of titled, What the Heck Do We Do Next? And that was a title not just for you, but for us as well. And we were getting a lot of feedback from our customer community, specifically last week. We did this nice little word cloud about what you as a community wanted to hear from other members of our attraction industry. And you could see there was a lot of chatter about reopening and guests and capacity and, what are you going to do on the inside of your attraction, which is why that we've changed. This is really going to be a 2-part series. Next week, we're going to focus on capacity managed inside of your attraction. How do you manage capacity as guests are moving around? And we're going to touch on that a little bit today. A little bit of a breakdown over that poll from last week. You can see that we're all kind of wanting to know all different things: capacity management, safety, generating revenue during this time, planning for reopening. So if you are having conversations at your attraction that are looking like this, you are in good company here. Everyone is feeling the same thing. So you could definitely see that this is the kind of direction that we're trying to go for you, our customers. So this is me. We're going to fire through this. We are getting a little bit of feedback from one of our presenters. It looks like we just might be muting one. There we go. We're good. Sorry, everybody. If that feedback's me, then somebody can let me know. This is me. Matt Hohenstein is also moderating today. He's joining us. We have a couple of guest panelists. Eddie Jones I've been having some chats with Eddie from the Atlanta Botanical Garden. He's got some great perspectives of what they've been planning, as well as Luis Almonte, the Senior Director of IT at the Discovery Science Foundation. Our team at Gateway that's going to help you through some of the training aspects will be Matt Steckel, Carrie Basta, and Dan Havland. And then our engineer behind the scenes, Bill D'Angelo, is going to help us out with the Q&A. He's our product communications manager. So a little bit of an industry update. If you joined us last week, we chatted a little bit about what we were starting to see in Asia. This is a picture of an opening. I believe this is 8 or 9 a.m. And if you were on that webinar last week, this is what happens when you quickly reopen and you have a customer base that is really excited to start revisiting your attraction. And so today we really wanted to focus on how do we prevent this from happening at your attraction, and really some of the conversations that we've all been having is every attraction needs to be flexible. During this time period, we have to be flexible. We have to understand that things are going to be changing rapidly. This concept of having a soft reopening has been really key to most of the conversations that I've been having with attractions and understanding safety. So last night we had a little bit of an informal gathering of members of the attractions community, and I just wanted to tell you a little bit about some of the chatter. Some of the lines that were discussed was, no matter what, when we reopen, we're not coming back to the world that we once knew. There's going to be differences in everything that we do, and our customers and other attractions are really looking to see behind the scenes what is different. And no one's decided on anything yet. There's some places that they don't have rules. Everyone's just spinning up a real big contingency plan. So my favorite was a conversation I was having with somebody, and they said, you know what, now we're really living in a giant if-then statement. So that being said, what can we do during this time period as we prepare? And we need to continue to look at locations that are starting to reopen. So Matthew is going to give us a little bit of an update about what's happening internationally. Matthew.
Yeah, so this week, one of the things I tried to just kind of get the pulse of is what some of the attractions that are open are doing right now. So one of the regions that has been less affected by COVID-19 was Taiwan. So one of the attractions there, the Janfunsun Fancy World, a couple of things that they were communicating on their website of what they're doing is one, taking 1 day a week to focus on cleaning and training. So that the attraction closes down on Tuesdays completely to allow for maybe deep cleaning as well as kind of reinforcing maybe training with some of their team members on new protocols or a reminder of those. They're implementing routine cleaning regularly. Hand sanitation is available throughout the park. They're also checking temperature prior to entry. If you are at 37.5 degrees Celsius or 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit, they're denying entry. And then they're encouraging the distancing of 1 meter outdoors, and then a greater distance when folks are indoors. And the other item I thought was interesting is that they've moved some of their indoor shows outdoors so that they could really take advantage of kind of that open air circulation. And then the next area, I believe, is South Korea, China, where we saw some of the attractions there opening up a little bit earlier. And here I learned a little bit about some of the museums there. So the Shanghai Museum has switched to being a capacity managed attraction where they're having a daily limit of 2,000 and then a specific in-attraction limit of 300. So at a given time, there's no more than 300 individuals in the attraction. They're doing that so that they can ensure there's the appropriate amount of space to allow for that social distancing. And then they're also limiting the amount of time that visitors can stay in the attraction to 2 hours. And like we saw in Taiwan, they're also checking temperatures before folks enter the attraction. At the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art, also in Shanghai, they're implementing capacity limits on each floor of their attraction, so making sure that each floor doesn't exceed a certain amount so that they're able to manage the space. And they're also capacity managing the attraction and assigning specific entry times to the attraction. And they've also indicated that they'll be implementing visitor dwell time limits as well. And then my last stop on this trip in Asia is South Korea. Here at the Everland Resort, they kind of did some good jobs of demonstrating both textually and image-wise to their guests that might be looking to attend on what they're going to do. One of the things that they're communicating is that employees are going to be wearing masks. And one of the other things that I also thought was interesting is that they're making sure that they are highly talking about what they have put in place for employees as well. That employees are wearing masks, that employees are going through temperature screening, that employees are being trained on hand washing, so that they can help to reinforce that safety and security that you're entering into, that they've taken these precautions so that you're in a good situation. They are establishing social spacing in all queues, not only maybe normal outside queues where generally you can't control it, but even attraction queues. So I thought the image there kind of in the middle of the screen where you see the yellow feet on the ground is a normal maybe attraction queue line where they've gone ahead and indicated the proper spacing to allow for social distancing. Thank you very much, Randy. They're also doing hourly disinfecting and sanitation to help ensure that the attraction cleanliness is maintained. They're checking temperatures prior to entry, the same that we saw in Taiwan of kind of the temperatures that they're going to deny entry at. And they're limiting use of indoor facilities, and they're creating new outdoor facilities. So somewhere where they might not have had an attraction or a space, but they have the space outdoors, they're moving out to it and then leveraging. So I think that's a good overview of what I was seeing with some of the attractions that are kind of already opened or maybe did not need to close, but what they did to kind of help protect their visitors.
Great, thank you, Matthew. And by the way, everyone, we are aware that there's some crackling sounds, and I promise you, everybody is muted except for Matthew during that time period. So unless it was Matthew, we are aware of it. We're trying to determine if it's something technical on our end, but if it's gone away, wow, that looks like it might have gone away. So maybe it was Matthew. Sorry, Matthew. Not sure. Okay, so it's great to get that industry update. I was actually just on a call a little bit earlier today, and the VP of operations at the Minnesota Twins was chatting with another ballpark operations owner in the sports industry, and they were talking through the sanitation aspect, and they were of course are concerned about stadiums, and it looks like Major League Baseball has some big plans to try to reopen without fans because the show must go on. It's kind of some of the mantra that I think that they're walking through, but they're really concerned about the restrooms and the mass gathering and how can you clean a stadium quickly enough to allow so many guests that are moving around in an attraction or a sporting event. So it's definitely the conversations we're having right now. Everyone is having. I love this. This is Omniplex Cinemas. They're starting to think about what does reopening maybe look like, and they're out in the UK. So as we're thinking about what's happening as we move maybe to the US as we start to reopen, obviously these are some of the discussion points that we've had already, but seat separation, online ticketing, sitting in assigned seats, that's actually going to be huge so that everybody kind of spatially distances the way that you want them to. Bill, I'm not sure, did we have a question?
We do. We have a few questions. Several are along the same lines of how the facilities that Matthew brought up are tracking people leaving and enforcing their dwell time. So do we have any information on how those particular facilities are controlling the traffic in that matter?
Actually, we're gonna answer that question in a few minutes. We're gonna talk a little bit about dwell time conversations and how you can get that data. So and share a little bit about what other places are doing. So we will answer that in a few minutes.
Other questions related to the update we just got is, does anybody have any idea what was being sprayed by that one worker?
Matthew, you're muted.
Thank you. Unfortunately, they didn't indicate exactly what they're using. We are seeing some situations where folks are using bleach. I doubt that it's being bleach in that situation, but we'll try to do some research and see what we can find on maybe what they're utilizing.
And as we start to talk about, where we're at here, we're clearly in the United States, we're starting to see that states and the federal government and municipalities are going back and forth to determine what does the road to reopening look like. And so this was a really good article, and there's a link at the bottom that you can look through and you can read about. But learning a little bit from David Rosenberg, he's the VP of Guest Experience at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and Sean Dixon, who's the CEO of San Diego Global, our friends down in San Diego. They're really seeing the soft reopening as the concept, right? They're gonna kind of reopen in reverse order, like it's gonna start in small groups and gatherings, And eventually the attraction industry is going to want to reopen with guests being comfortable enough to be together. But there's been a lot of chatter about VIP type experiences during the soft reopening. The conversation I had again earlier with some of the attraction community earlier today, they were talking about what does a VIP experience really look like, where maybe you're starting to really have to charge more money to maintain that experience. And we were playfully joking, and what does it look like if you went to like Disney or Universal on a day with 2,500 people, and what might you look to pay to have a great experience, but you'd also have to be safe and capacity manage that attraction. I do want to mention a little bit about the creativity of our industry. There's been some real playful interactions that have continued to happen. I think we need to continue to innovate and think about bringing education into our experiences. If you're a nonprofit, we've seen this out of Disney and Universal as well, some interactives. Eddie, I want to talk to you for a moment at the Atlanta Botanical, because you and I had a really interesting chat, because like many of us, you and your team are planning to reopen as soon as possible. Do you mind sharing with us a little bit about what you are doing right now to shift gears into a capacity managed attraction?
All right. So right now, what we have done, we've made our tickets available for 15-minute intervals, and only 50 people can enter during that 15-minute interval. So that's 200 people an hour, about 2,000 to 2,500 people per day. We usually can get up to 7,000 people in a day, but we're with the pandemic going on, we want to limit our capacity. And also we've actually we've allowed self-scanning for our tickets. We purchased USB extenders so that the scanners can actually reach further away from the actual computers and desktops, and the customers and visitors can scan their own tickets, and the attendants will only go to interact with the customers if there is an issue with the scanner or the tickets not being able to scan. We also have removed one of our attractions in the entry to prevent buildup in the entrance, to allow a better flow throughout the garden.
Well, Lee, I'm gonna chat a little bit about this. So because it looks like Miriam had a question about if you're a museum that is moving to time ticketing. Obviously, a lot of attractions today that are maybe museums, you might just sell tickets. You don't actually scan tickets, because when you sell the ticket, you just let the person in. So they're not even equipped to maybe have an area like this. So Eddie, this is what you do today with your access control. I think what you're saying is that you're going to have the staff member maybe be against the wall or in some location, and you just extended the USB on that scanner so the guest scans, and then you keep your social distancing. Is that kind of what you're talking about for you're modifying your area?
All right, so in the picture here, this is actually our scan for our members. Our members would just walk through the door, and they will not stop at the admission booth. We're removing this. As you see in the left picture, there are 4 booths. Everyone will be scanned through the booth now, and we're going to move the scanners to the outside.
Oh, okay. Understand. Oh, so that's actually good, because another question was, how do you limit that contact? So it looks like your employee would be kind of safely inside your area. The scanner will be extended out, and then someone could just come and use the scanner right there and scan them. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
And you said you're going to do 50 people every 15 minutes. That's the interval that you're looking at?
Yeah, that's the interval that we're looking at right now.
Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about how maybe we got to that interval in a moment. There was a question from Malcolm about how do you protect your staff in a scanning booth. So going back to this other shot, Eddie, are you going to have your employees in an area like this for your members?
No. No, not at all. Now, before our members would just simply walk in, they wouldn't have to, and we would scan their tickets. Now, members also have to select a time slot for their tickets.
Oh, wow. Okay. So members, traditionally your members would just come in and they can just come in anytime they want. Now they're going to have to make a time in advance. And then they're just going to just enter in just like a guest would be at your ticket booth. Is that right?
Correct.
Eddie, I don't know if I showed you this picture. I found this map of an overview of a concept of your location. And I think you can see that there's a lot of pathways here. You mentioned a little bit about your entrance area, which I'm kind of zooming in on. And I think when you and I were having a chat, is you have like a bit of a bottleneck in some of these areas as people come in, and so you've actually changed some of your exhibit areas to prevent people from stopping immediately after entrance. Is that right?
That is correct.
That's interesting.
We removed one of the fixtures and just planted more flowers, and kind of to control the flow of which, and we also are creating actual flow traffic for our visitors to kind of give them a new guest experience. And some visitors might not have seen certain areas of the garden because it's kind of been a walk. You kind of just walk the garden and walk your own pathway. And
we have a lot of questions coming in about memberships, selecting time slots, and limiting capacity. So I want to let everybody know we're actually going to talk about that later in the webinar, how you might set up time slots for members and do reservations, as well as how do you limit capacity. So Eddie, one more question. If somebody shows up outside of the time that they've selected, what is your contingency plan for them? How are you going to manage? Are you going to just restrict them from entering, or are you going to put them in an area to wait till there's a capacity time that allowed them to come in? Have you thought about that?
Yes. We could configure the calendar so that guests can scan their tickets 15 minutes before their arrival time in case there's open slots. And also the tickets will be valid throughout the rest of the day in case something happens. Otherwise, we will be constantly refunding tickets and changing time slots. It's just if you purchase your ticket, you miss your time slot. If there is an availability, we will let you through.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, so I want to jump forward to Lewis a little bit. Lewis, you have some other interesting challenges. Right? You're not a garden at the Discovery Science Center, but you have really large capacity free visit days, and you have kind of a pinch point as people enter. I'm just curious what conversations you've been having, and what have you done at your location to begin the concepts of discussing capacity management?
Well, the first thing we did was we started with a task force. We kind of built a task force internally, and we're kind of broken it up into the different types of products that we offer. Now, one thing that I will tell you is that, we're waiting to see what the city is going to allow, right? What the city and the state is going to allow, because currently we can't be open anyway. But once the city, eases back some restriction, they let us know, for example, how many people can be together at one time, then we'll be able to know. But we are going to capacity manage all of our general admission tickets. We do also plan on having our members select, get free tickets online that they can then, when they show up on site, we'll verify that they're a member and we'll allow them in. Also, one of the conversations that me and you were having is that we're considering for the tickets that we have when we have like a free day or something, we're going to try to move all of those to online as well so that we don't have people standing outside buying tickets. And then, we're going to have special consideration for groups. And, if summer cap happens, which we have planned for this summer, then obviously we'll have a plan in place for that as well.
And I like something for both Eddie and Lewis. I think both of us were kind of talking about remapping the experience. I think, Eddie, you had mentioned that traditionally you would exit kind of where the entrance is. And are you changing that, Eddie, at the garden?
Yes, we're looking into opening up our back gate for exiting to limit the amount of guests that are in the visitor center. Uh, because right now, if you walk through the visitor center, um, there's probably about 12 feet of distance between the exit door and the entrance door. So if we have a large group of people exiting at the same time, it's inevitable that people will come in close contact with each other.
And Louis, how are you guys addressing that with your groups and your guests as they arrive?
So for special groups like field trips and summer camps, we plan on keeping them together and kind of building a route for them. It's still up in the air, like I said, because we don't even know the size of the groups yet. For general customers, we have talked about building a path, like a one-way path, kind of like when you go to IKEA, so that you kind of go straight through, and then eventually, once you get to the end, then you exit. But like I said, a lot of it is still in the area. But we are, like I said, we broke it down into the different areas. So we've talked about what we're going to do with back office employees. So if you don't need to be on site, you're probably going to stay as a telecommuter until this is over with. We'll only be allowing employees that need to be on site. And the last thing we've talked about is what are we going to do about protection equipment? Who's going to have to wear it? What are they wearing? And also the thought of our clean teams, so people clearly identified as a clean team that are out just constantly cleaning. They're constantly going back and forth between the different, the first floor, the second floor outside and making sure that things are being cleaned. And the last thing I was going to say is that we've also thought about maybe looked at to see what we're going to do about food, because we know that can be an issue. We have a cafeteria at each of the locations, small restaurants. So we may not even have them open at the beginning, but we're still that's still up in the air.
Well, part of your COVID task force, if you are part of the COVID task force at your location, is you maybe take a gathering of understanding who's on your team. Something interesting about Louis is, you actually have a background in the Army, and I think you actually are specialists in biological agents and decontamination. So that you being part of that team is really helping to guide some of those decisions around food and what you're going to present to your guests as an offering. Is that right?
Yeah, I spent 10 years in the Army doing that. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm providing that type of expertise, but I am sensitive to the idea of cross-contamination and what can happen, if you don't do something to limit the exposure. So.
Wow, I think just you might have a person on your team that you don't know that they have that kind of background. I think that's kind of what I was going with there. Part of the decision-making process to determine do we allow 50 people every 15 minutes or whatnot is to really understand your metrics. And so I'm just curious, Eddie, actually Louis, how do you figure out how many people you can allow per hour? What have you guys done today that is helping you make decisions in the future about what you can allow at any given time?
Well, like I said, we don't really have like any way. We don't have something in place right now that automatically counts people that are exiting. But in the past we have done surveys of people exiting the building, and we've kind of figured out kind of like our dwell time. But one of the things that we're considering is maybe we'll wristband people as they come in with different color wristbands, so that we can keep track of those people that are not supposed to be there anymore. So if we do decide, for example, to do like a certain group of people that are only supposed to be there, let's say from 8 to 10, then we might give them a certain color wristband. And that way, as the staff is walking around, if they notice that there's people there that have overstayed, they can kind of come up to them and politely tell them that, they need to leave.
It's a good way to visually show that. And how long do people typically stay at your attraction?
Well, we have 3 sites, but our biggest site, which is the Discovery Cube Orange County, it's around 2.5 hours.
And is it just, I think you mentioned you did some kind of surveying to get.
Yeah, we just did some surveys where we've done surveys where we've asked people, questions, and then we'll ask them for the transaction, their ticket, and we get the transaction number, and then we'll kind of measure at what time they bought their ticket, at what time it was scanned, and then when they took the survey on their way out. So we would position people by the exit door. So, we've come up with a couple of ways of finding out, but that's where we're kind of at, around 2.5 hours at the Orange County location.
And Eddie, you actually, you said you normally would have 7,000 and you're dropping that number to 2,500. How long is your length of stay today, and how do you determine that?
So before I became a Galaxy admin here at the Garden, they did polls and research on geolocating and were able to determine the dwell of the visitors.
That's a good tool. So it looks like survey, you're going to have to look at historical data, look at your GPS data or your geolocation, your sensing data. Matthew, do you have any advice for people that maybe they can look at their data today to understand, what their metrics are?
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the most important factors, I'd kind of seen from what we were seeing other attractions do that are currently open is managing how many people are in the attraction at one time. The goal there is making sure that number fits with making sure that those folks have space within the attraction to be on their own. And unfortunately, that probably is going to come down to kind of the key parts of your attraction and how congested that they might get. So as you think about kind of, hey, what is that number that I should be allowing in my attraction? I think focusing on the areas where they're going to be more congested and understanding kind of how many folks can fit in that, and then kind of, game playing of, okay, where would people be otherwise than that, and kind of building up that number is really what's going to be key. But then it gets to be a very simple mathematical equation to figure out, am I at the number or not? How many people have entered? How many people have exited? And the difference between those is how many people are currently in my attraction. So one of the things, as you're thinking through that is and with your specific ticketing system or maybe Galaxy, is how do I count those entries? Most attractions are generally doing that because they're scanning tickets, because, there's some sort of admission cost to come in. So we can count those number of scans and the number of people that are associated with those tickets to know how many people have come in. One of the important areas to keep in mind is that you may not be counting everyone. There may be some folks that you let in without a scan, for example, children under 3. And if those are going to have a meaningful impact on kind of your in-attraction account, then we probably want to figure out a way that we manually count them, or we, identify another way to kind of get that data into our ticketing system so that we can leverage it. On the exit side, a lot of attractions have turnstiles maybe at the exit that have a bar that each rotation counts, or sometimes we just have an attendant maybe manning the exit to make sure that it's only one-way traffic, that with a simple clicker could be counting the number of people that are exiting in a given time. More advanced attractions might already have kind of people counters in place where there's kind of an infrared camera in the sky that knows how many people are going one way or another way. But those are some of the ways that we can do that. If we specifically look within the Galaxy ticketing system at that, one of the things that we can do on the access control point is have two different what we call function keys or F keys. One could be a function key where we record a scan without actually scanning a ticket for those that we're going to admit under the age of 3 or any other special population that we may normally scan a ticket for. So in this example, you can see, I've just got that function key defined. I've gone ahead and put a certain visual ID that is configured to allow for multiple scans and to have kind of a very high bank. And each time I press that, it'll record that scan, and then I can capture that data to know that an additional person is inside my facility. The other option is, one more, Randy, sorry. The other thing is having the ability to record an exit count at the access control point. So by hitting the record exits button and then entering a number, I can enter into the Galaxy ticketing system the number of people that are exiting. So if I've got an attendant that is manually clicking folks, and they can just record that number from time to time into the access control system. And then all of that data can be used within kind of existing reports, or if you have your own ticketing system or you're doing this in a more manual style. Randy, you can go to the next slide. Where you can, you can record these entries and exits into the ticketing system, and then you can calculate what my in-park or in-attraction attendance is. And again, that's simply the number of people that enter less the number of people that exit, and then kind of looking at that as over time, right? So in this example, you'll see on the bottom right, at 9 a.m., 36 people entered and 6 people left. So my at the end of that hour, my in park or in attraction attendance was 30, and so on. So one of the things that may be helpful to understand is, okay, great, we know how many people are entering and we know how many people are exiting, and we're capturing that at some regular frequency, like at the end of each one of the hours. However, what does that turn into? What's my average dwell time? Because if I'm going to make time slots and start having folks come in at different time slots, I need to understand the people that came in at 9 a.m. and those 36 people, how long are they going to be there? Again, another simple mathematical equation. So I can take and add up each hour's in-park attendance. So at 9 a.m. I had 30, at 10 a.m. I had 80. Add each of those up and come up with a number of 995. I then divide that by how many unique people were here today. So there was only 896 unique people here. So I can determine that, hey, on average, it's a 1 hour and 7 minute dwell time. Then one of the other figures that may be helpful is understanding, hey, how did we manage to this? Did we hit the numbers? Did we exceed the number that we wanted or not? So here, looking at each hour and seeing, okay, well, the maximum amount of people I had in my attraction was 309, and maybe my goal was 350 as the maximum. And so I've done pretty well in managing that, leveraging this data.
That's great information, Matthew. We've had a lot of questions come in that I'm going to try to answer some of them. Someone had a question about working with other types of people counters, and maybe coming out of this, it's definitely something you might need to do. Traditionally, a lot of us have turn bars. I actually was on a call previously with someone, and they're removing their turn bars altogether during this time period because the turn bars see so many people walk through, little kids touch their hands. So you might need to start looking at some optical counters. There's a company named Trafsys that I know of. I think the Aquarium of the Pacific was using them to monitor people as they move from space to space. I'm not sure if that's the tool, but yeah, if you're using a people counter, look at optical counters, thermal sensors. A lot of these devices can be programmed to share data with Galaxy, or you could just come up with your own reporting tool that would allow you to use that tool. I think having an employee near the exit that's just monitoring exit scans in some way and sharing that data with a team is probably going to be the normal, because even though you're going to sell tickets at a certain time, you really are going to need to keep a true capacity to move people from space to space. You might even see locations do that inside their attraction. I think we're going to talk about that more next week, but maybe only allow certain people as they move from space to space. And it does bring up some conversations of where do guests go when they're waiting. I would advise almost everyone to really discourage pre-arrivals. Communicate that in your messaging. Say, please do not show up more than 15 minutes early. Please wait in your car until the set time. We've chatted with people that are going to start gating a lot of that experience at the parking gates. So Lewis, for instance, you have a parking gate. People arrive, you might need to start looking at people's credentials, so to speak, or their arrival time through. You might need to turn them around if they're too early, just because you can't accommodate them. Is that something you guys are talking about a little bit at your parking gates?
Yeah, we like I said, we've been talking about a lot of things. It's just that really what we are kind of waiting for in order for us to actually start having serious conversations to find out what the city's going to allow us to do, because that's going to determine a lot. I mean, whether we can do 50 people an hour or 50 people every 15 minutes, and how we're going to move those around. I mean, one of the big problems that you have when you have a big open space is that how do you stop someone, from getting together? Like it happens right now, there's like a cool exhibit. You might have 50 people looking at that one exhibit at one time. Maybe 2 or 3 people are interacting with it. Everybody else is standing around. So what do we do to stop that? And the same thing is going to be in the parking lot, everywhere else. Sometimes, people go out to eat lunch at their cars in the parking lot, so what are we going to do about that? So once we get some guidance from the local government that lets us know, this is how many people can be joined together, then we'll have more serious discussions about this.
Yeah, and then also, how does that work on retail spaces? Joe Higgins just asked about retail spaces. And it might be like the Apple Store when Apple's selling a new phone. You might need to start moving people around, but then where do people wait in line? So I think a lot of this is going to go online. You're going to have to think of what your spaces look like in your retail, and we're definitely going to add that to the conversation for next week. Nicole Meek had a question about managing group size and group arrival size. I would say my advice to most locations would be, really look at those group limits and reducing them. I was on the phone earlier today with the Gateway Arch in St. Louis, and how are they going to manage? If you've ever been in those trams, they're these smaller trams that you typically, if you were a party of 2 and a party of 3, they'd put you together, and there's no way you're going to get in that tram with people that you don't know. So we're going to have to get a little bit more creative of how we manage groups and arrivals to keep people in a pod, as Lewis is calling them at the Discovery Science Center, putting people in a pod and keeping that pod together as they experience your attraction. For the time, we're going to keep trying to answer these questions as we go, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass this off to Carrie. Now, Carrie is part of our learning team. She's going to show us a little bit about some tips in Galaxy about capacity management. We understand that a lot of you are using different software. The lingo that we're going to be using might be relative to the Gateway ticketing product, but we don't care what product you're using. We're just here to kind of conceptually help you as you might be needing to do this at your attraction. So, Carrie, why don't you take over about the technology shift that is necessary for our attractions?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Carrie. I'm an instructor here. And what we're going to do is kind of talk about how do we take that data that we kind of just talked through, where we have in parks or what our length of stay look like, and how do we put that into operation and support that using your ticketing software. So as we look at that data, there are a couple operational decisions that you can make along how do I want to manage the number of people that I have in a general admission. So a lot of our attractions to date might not be managing that capacity because maybe they have more size than they thought they needed, or maybe their attendance is a little bit different. So one option is to just set your general attendance to the full day. So saying every day I want to have X amount of people, or I know we can manage X amount of people at our site. This is going to be for our attractions that it is a full day experience. There's enough to do, or the length of stay kind of hovers around that 6 to 8 hours. So we're going to say, hey, if somebody comes in the morning, they're most likely to stay for most of the day. As you're looking at your split time attendance, maybe it's, hey, there's, kind of if I come in the morning, I'm done by around noon. If I come in the afternoon, I'm there through early evening. So maybe you just want to split that that general attendance into 2 pieces where we have, some morning general admission and then afternoon. Another option for maybe some of our attractions like Lewis, where it's more of a 2.5 to 4 hour stay, maybe we just look at arrival times and saying, hey, you can kind of start your experience at this time, and then you have from your data supporting that they're usually going to be within your attraction within for about 2 to 3 hours. We'll talk next week a little bit more about how do you kind of stagger or cause that or walk them through what they're going to do for that 2 to 3 hours, but that might be, another option of how we're making that capacity be managed throughout those specific times. So now we're going to get a little bit into the setup. Again, we know that there are non-Galaxy users on the call, so I'm going to try and speak generically to what you might be doing in your system as well. So when it comes to Galaxy, we're going to need to start with creating what we call a resource. So that's going to be something that's representative of a space or a location that has that capacity limitation, and we want to make sure that we don't overbook. So in Galaxy, this is where what we're going to use to determine how many tickets can be sold, and then making sure that we're not overbooking or double scheduling. So for current Galaxy users, you might not be using general admission or management capacity for general admission, but maybe you already have a resource that's set up for something like a buyout or something along those lines where you have a special event that says, hey, this is the full capacity that I have, and we're going to sell that many tickets. So don't feel like you need to set up a new resource just to transition to this type of operation. You can use that same resource. You might just need to tweak the capacity or something like that on the initial resource itself. For us in the resource, the other thing that you're going to do is just say, hey, this is a capacity managed resource. So it's not just, hey, we want to make sure nothing's in this space or in this room or in this location. We want to actually control the number of tickets that we're selling at that or to this location. So in this case, I picked an arbitrary number of 2,500, and we're going to say that's our general admission capacity for the time. So once we've identified what the capacity is going to be, then we're going to set up what we call an event. So it's great to say, hey, I can only sell 2,500 tickets, but at what time, for what day, what does that look like as far as, when is that capacity going to be enforced? And that's what we're going to do through setting up an event. So the first thing you want to identify is when's the start and end time, what's the length of that event look like. So this is going to go back to that initial slide of how long do you want that event for general admission to last? Is it your full operating hours? Are you going to split your operating hours into different experiences? In this case, I'm just doing a full day of 8 a.m. to or 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. One of the options we have in Galaxy, and I'm sure most other ticketing systems have as well, is being able to determine then the sales availability for that event. So as we know, things are going to be changing probably as rapidly as they are today when we get into the soft open period. So maybe you only want people to be able to select general admission tickets, 2 to 3 weeks out, or maybe 2 months out, something along those lines. So we do have some options to be able to limit how far out you can purchase those general admission tickets to have a better idea of what that operation is actually going to look like on that specific day. So in this case, I'm doing a 2-month lead time to be able to select this event. We'll also talk a little bit later about how we can be more dynamic and a little bit more business smart on what those on and off sale times look like. So once we've set the date and time of what the event is going to look like, we also want to associate that resource that we had previously made to make sure that we're saying, okay, at this specific date and time, here's how many tickets I have the ability to sell. Once I have that event created, then I need to make sure that I can sell tickets to that event. So within Galaxy, this is one of the options that you have for the different types of PLUs is to be able to make that ticket what we call capacity managed, or say, hey, when I sell this ticket, I want to reduce that capacity for that specific date and time. So I'm going to go ahead and enable that function on this PLU. I then am going to be able to filter the type of events that ticket is going to be able to sell to. So in this case, I'm able to I'll show the ticket seller any of the events that I set up that have that general admission type. So I can pick Tuesday or Wednesday or next Thursday, depending on when that guest is planning on coming. I'm also going to associate the resource here. That's going to mean when I sell this ticket, then I'm going to start to reduce the capacity that I had originally set on that resource. So if you remember, I set that to 2,500. So each time I sell this type of ticket, it's going to reduce that capacity down to $24.99 and so on. In Galaxy, this is going to be that reduction of the capacity of the resource is going to happen dynamically. So whether those tickets are being purchased on the web store, at site, maybe even through some of your third-party travel partners through our Galaxy Connect product, you're always going to have that updated capacity and making sure that you're staying in compliance for that social distancing or whatever local regulations you're trying to accommodate. So I'm going to quickly just show what this is going to look like from a sales perspective. Here, if I were on site or a ticket seller, I'd be able to select that adult ticket. I'm going to select the first day that I am going to be open, which I have is May 4th. And now you'll see that I have that general admission set up, and I'm able to select that event. and sell that product. You'll see now that capacity has reduced by that one ticket, and that I'm selling into that general admission event for that day. So unlike if you're not using capacity management today, you might not have to select that date and time. Now we know when to reduce that capacity for the specific time that guest is anticipating coming. Now we know that probably going into the next soft open here, or when we're able to reboot, that a lot of our sales are going to be done through the web. So here is going to be what that web experience looks like for a guest who might not be on site. One of the things that I really like about our web store is that it is dynamic as far as descriptions. So I was very easily able to update the description here on my admission tickets to provide information to the guest about why we're going this route. Why do I have to select my day and time, and trying to be as transparent as we can, because hopefully the guests that are coming maybe have visited your attraction before, and we know that they're not going to have the same options. So we want to use the tools that we have available to us to be able to communicate with them and let them know, why we've made these changes to our ticketing structure. From here, I'm able to do the same kind of concept as the guest. I'm able to select my general admission ticket here, and that's going to assign the date that I'm anticipating on coming as the guest, and then I can check the type of tickets I have so that my whole family is able to join. We're using what we call a shared calendar here, so I do only have to check or select that event date once, and then I can purchase the tickets for my entire family. But you can see it's fairly simple for even from the guest standpoint to be able to select that general admission. So the last thing I wanted to just kind of demonstrate as we talk about setting up these events to begin with is that we want to be able to be flexible, right? We know things are going to change at a rapid pace, so maybe I set up all my general admission events to be at 2,500, and then as things start to, hopefully get a little bit better, I'm able to increase that capacity or that availability. So for our Galaxy users, one of the easiest ways to be able to make those adjustments somewhat on the fly is going to be using our planner products. So here you're going to be able to see all those general admission events that you've created. I have these set up in a couple different ways based on some of the options that we discussed. So either one event for the full day or having that split event. So if I am coming into a week and I realize that I am able to up my capacity a little bit, maybe we were really conservative when we started and we've made some efficiencies as far as queuing or how we're designing the guest experience to be able to have extra capacity, I can actually modify this event and change that capacity very easily. I can choose which of the events I want to change. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and change this individual one, and I can go ahead and up that capacity and increase the number of sales that I'd be able to do within that day. One of the other options that we wanted to highlight is that you may have or you could use the option of being able to create additional starting times. So we looked at that option of saying, hey, we might assign you an arrival time. So let's say you decide to start at every hour. You can also create every half hour as an inactive event that won't be available for sale until you decide. So again, this would be another way to be able to increase that capacity using that scheduled start time, where I'd be able to go through and activate that event. Again, all my on the hour events are already active. So here I'm able to just turn on anything that I have already configured for 10:30, and it's a very quick and easy ability to be able to activate that 30-minute mark. So that's just another way that you can kind of plan ahead as you're looking at how to create these events for general admission and being able to be flexible as your requirements are going to change. I know that was a lot in a short period of time. Randy, how am I doing on questions?
Oh, there's a lot of questions, actually, and I'll address a couple of them so we could kind of move this along. Everybody, we're doing a quick time check. We're going to go to about 1:15 based on the amount of content we have remaining, maybe 1:20. But Janelle mentioned what might be some recommendations for best practice for guests who already have open-ended tickets. I believe Matt Steckel's going to talk about that a little bit. So if you have a ticket that's not timed, what does it look like to turn that into a capacity managed ticket? If he doesn't get to that, Galaxy has some functionality that you could scan a ticket and then select a time, and that might involve your guest needing to, wait a little bit, or there are some tools through some other resources through the call center. You could upgrade tickets and change the product. So we might touch on that a little bit, and then there was one comment that we had. I think it was Eddie that's doing that at Atlanta Botanical, but I highly recommend that you look at, if someone mentioned, I mentioned grocery stores and a few other experiences in our last webinar. One of the things I've noticed at Costco and the grocery stores is that there's special select time for specific members of your audience and your guests. So this is a good example where you might need to create a special time. So Eddie, I believe you guys have a special opening period that you've designed for maybe some of your guests that need more assistance. Is that correct?
Yes, we're looking into the option of having our special needs and elderly have a specific time slot just for them to enter into the garden.
And you might, in our ticketing software, what you might do is select a time at the beginning, change that capacity. Instead of maybe being 50 people every 15, it might be 50 people every 30. You might make those adjustments, or you might name it special, or you might put some holds on it so it's only for a select audience. So it's definitely something to consider. Look around at what your restaurants, your grocery stores are doing, because your customers are going to expect the same level of behavior. We are going to pass it off to Matt to take a little deeper dive into some of those holds now. So Carrie's going to transition to Matt, and Matt's going to share from his screen. And to give everybody a heads up, after Matt's done, he'll have about 6-7 minutes of showcasing. We're going to pass it on to Dan Havlin, who's going to focus on membership and pass reservations. So we'll just do a quick transition to him right after Matt is done so we can show that content, because there's a lot of questions about reservations. So go ahead, Matt. Thank you.
All right, no problem. I'm Matt Steckel. I'm a member of the managed service team here at Gateway. So I'm going to be talking about using some of those tools that Carrie mentioned, using those events to accommodate the guests that you have coming through. We want to think about partner attendance. We want to think about walk-up sales. What are we doing with groups? What are we doing with pass holders? And as there was a couple questions, what do we do about existing untimed general admission sales? So I'm not going to cover all these in detail. It's more about trying to introduce some concepts and some tools within Galaxy, and that you may have in your ticketing system if you're not using Galaxy today. Just some food for thought and some things that you may have at your disposal. So the first two items we're going to talk about are managing those events that Carrie talked about. So we have a couple different ways where we can take a portion of the attendance that we set aside to come through the gate in a certain amount of time and put it to the side and use it for a specific purpose. And then we also have a way to limit sales, so we don't sell more than we should through certain channels. So first we're going to talk about what we call holds in Galaxy. So if I have an event that allows 2,000 sales, what a hold does is it allows me to define a specific product. You can see that on the right-hand side. I've defined a specific product that I can sell out of that hold. So what I've done in this case is I've set aside 250 tickets for this event for this travel partner that I have, which allows them to have a reserved capacity and make sure that we keep them happy as we're selling through. Holds can also be used for things like member tickets. So, we're going to let 200 people through the door every hour. We want to make sure that we set 20 aside for our members. So that if the general public comes up and eats up all our capacity right away, then most they're going to take is 180 because we still have 20 set aside for members. It doesn't mean we're limiting our members to only 20 to come through, but we're reserving a minimum of 20 against a specific product for them to be able to do that. Again, you would still need to take their reservations over the phone or maybe through a web store with a member required ticket or something like that to take away this capacity. But this allows you to set aside a portion of what would come through your gate for a specific purpose, again, whether it's those members, whether it's those trade partners. The second tool that I wanted to mention when it comes to these capacity managed events is sales channel allocation. So what this does, and you can really see it over in this right-hand the right-hand side where it says the capacity, we're setting a limit on the number of tickets that we can sell through certain channels. Maybe you want to limit what your groups are selling because you want to hold a little bit back to the gate. Maybe you want to hold a little bit back from the web store so you can sell more at the gate so you can accommodate guests as they're walking up. Galaxy sales channel limits allow you to define the maximum number sold through that channel. So this is a really good tool to again, reserve things where you need them, when you need them, to make sure that you don't run out of capacity. So you're not constantly going back and adding capacity to your events. Again, events are all about controlling sales. They're not going to control how many people come through your gate. You can still create a general admission ticket that will, override what you have. This is all about controlling, sales and how many people you expect at the gate. So those are really the two really easy to use pieces of the events that you can take advantage of in Galaxy today, or maybe some concepts you might be able to take away to your own system. These next two slides are really going to talk about what we can do with existing general admission holders. So there's really two common paths to dealing with them beyond some more complex configurations. The first is to set up blackout calendars on their tickets. So in this case, my general admission ticket, I've gone ahead and added a blackout calendar between April 15th and May 15th. So even though when they bought their ticket, it's good for 1 year from the date of sale, as you can see the name in the description, I've added a rule midstream that says you're not going to be able to use this during this period of time. Galaxy access codes are dynamic, meaning they are read as they are built at the current time, which allows us to manipulate them after you've already issued the ticket to the guests. So what I can do is I can put a blackout calendar. I can actually update the access code to put something more friendly than blacked out on an access control point. And what it'll do is it'll prevent the guests from entering, and then you can send them to a place where they can upgrade that general admission ticket to a timed ticket to allow them to come in and allow you to control the capacity through your gate. If you decide that you do want to allow them to go to the gate to get replaced, to select the time, Galaxy does have the ability to print replacement tickets when you scan at the gate. You don't have to use this at a turnstile or use this at a dedicated scanning area either. You could just set up a station with scanning enabled. What happens is you scan the ticket. We can add some configuration. I'll show you in just one moment where we can actually replace their general admission ticket with a timed ticket. And what this screen capture is showing is it's actually showing you at a turnstile or at a scanning station that you can choose the event for the guest. So I'm going to show you that right now. Switch over to Galaxy. So this is my anytime access code. This is my 1 year from date of sale. I've made 3 key modifications. The first is I'm not allowing reentry. I'm allowing the guests to scan the ticket once, and we're not going to scan for reentry. The second thing I've done is I've actually updated my message when I scan their ticket to indicate not that it's okay, go ahead, it's green. I've changed some of the colors to black and yellow, more of a warning color, and a message that's going to say use timed replacement. So again, that's to really help out my turnstile operators or help out those that my team members that are going to be replacing these tickets for guests, to give them the message that you're not done, it's not green, that doesn't mean go. The third configuration is over here on the printing tab. I've actually set it up so that when I scan this, I'm actually going to replace it with a different product. And the R is just for replacement, and it has a different access code on it. So when I scan this anytime ticket at the turnstile, it will pop up and ask me to select the time event. It will then print a replacement ticket for me. I'm going to have to do it through an on-screen printer just because you can't see a printer that I have here. That will print a new barcode for the guests so they can come back, and then you can build your access rules around that dated timed ticket. Something like Eddie said, you can scan 15 minutes before and then for the rest of the day. Again, we can help you with some of those configurations around, what kind of parameters do you set around the event that they select. So I'm going to cancel out of this configuration and go to point of sale. I have my list of pre-issued general admission tickets over here. So I'm going to launch the scanning station. I'll enter that barcode. I'll scan it, and it'll pop up, and it'll ask me to select one of these events that's available today. Again, I have 3. It shows me the availability. Through holds or through sales channel configuration, you could limit how much the turnstile has access to if you wanted to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and select my 3 o'clock time. I'll choose OK. And it'll give me that use timed replacement message. And it did print a new barcode right here. So if I go ahead and grab this replaced barcode, let me get my on-screen printer out of the way. I can scan that, and it now gives me the OK message, and you'll see that I am scanning my event ticket now. So through a little bit of configuration on that general admission ticket, I can add a scanning station. Again, it doesn't have to be a turnstile. It could be a point of sale that just has scanning enabled. I can replace it with that timed ticket. So just to walk through that again, I'll put in that barcode. It lets me choose a time, and I get my replacement ticket. That would be good for that timed event. So again, this allows you to control a little bit of how often people are coming through the gates. So any questions, Randy?
No, well, there's a lot of questions, but really great info. That actually answers some of the questions we were just talking about. We did have a question about access calendars. Can you just show us maybe how an access calendar might be set up for a product? This is really something that is unique. This is in our product in Galaxy, but any ticket in almost any ticketing system can allow sale at a certain time, but then allow usage at a certain time. So
yeah,
in
so
order to restrict that, you would use an access calendar.
Yeah, so I ran into access calendars kind of quickly. So if you're a Galaxy user, it's under data maintenance, calendar maintenance.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and pick this 30 minutes before event calendar that I already have set up from this data set that I'm working with. And what you're going to want to do is go to your relative rules list, set your relative to your event. So that's what we're booking here is an event that Carrie showed the setup of and I showed selection of the turnstile. So once we have our anchor time, which is our event time, we can configure over here how far before that event time do we allow scanning and how long after. So in this case, I have my event time, let's say it's 3 o'clock. I can scan 30 minutes before 3 o'clock, and I can scan up to an hour and a half after 3 o'clock. So really, when we have our event, that's really about controlling sales. The calendar is how you control the access of the guests once they have that ticket in their hand.
Awesome. So that answers a question that Chris Jones had, so I wanted to make sure we took a moment to just showcase that. We are going to jump right over to Dan now. Dan Havlin is going to show us a little bit about strategies for members and reservations. And while Dan is getting his screen set up, we understand that there's many of us that typically would allow members to just come in. So Dan is going to talk about what might you need to do for a member to select the time. Go ahead, Dan.
All right, thanks, Randy. As you said, I'm a business solution engineer here at Gateway. And a problem with season passes or memberships, and I'll use this term interchangeably, is that those members are used to having a direct to gate access with their card. In this new normal, we might need to schedule these arrivals. And one way we can do that is by requiring that members purchase time tickets ahead of their arrival. So the first solution I'm going to look at is for individual members. And we can use a tool like eGalaxy's Pass Portal to make reservations. So let's look at that journey pathway. Using the eGalaxy Pass Portal, an individual pass or member can go online, purchase a reservation. For example, we'll look at Hapabera's membership here, and he can log in. Who is a member who wants to visit the zoo? Happy can log in, click the reservations button, and select his requested date and time. And of course, add in any additional things to his experience that he might want to participate while at the zoo. So here on my membership reservations page, I have my entry product. I have maybe some day guest passes if he wants to bring a friend, and just zoo parking as some options. So we will purchase a entry time here. Just need one. And then we'll say we'll come at 5 and add to the cart. And as Matt and Carrie showed, right, there can be different on sale or off sale times for members, as well as these could be pulling from a hold in just your general capacity for admission. So I'm allowing members to purchase same day right up to the entry time just for this demonstration, but those are configurable options. So with his date time selected, I now am directing him to an add-ons page where he can add on different things to enhance his experience here at the zoo. I added parking and hand sanitizer as an example, but you can define other products that enhance your guest visits. Maybe add guest passes here or stroller rentals or that face mask that Randy and Bill were talking about in the last seminar. But for now, we'll say no thanks. And then here at the cart, Happy can link his ticket to his membership. This is helpful because Happy doesn't need to bring anything with him then. He just needs to bring his card just like normal, right? No additional piece of media. So we do want to add this onto our existing membership card. So I'll just go ahead and do that. Check out. And again, we don't need to print anything here. We're just going to put this live digital barcode, right, this entitlement now right onto Happy's membership. So since he is a member, just fill out all his information. We just accept the terms and conditions and submit our order. And now Happy is ready for his day at the zoo. And the best part is, you guys know when he's coming, and you can plan according to the demand of the members. So that was one way to do a membership reservation using our eGalaxy Passportal on the web or another similar tool. But if you're not using Passportal on the web and you are a customer, or if you're using joint memberships or like a household family membership, another tool that we offer is a Pass Required Sales Channel. And this works similar to Passportal, but it doesn't allow the ticket to be linked to the membership card. So let's take a look at what Happy's journey would look like using this path. So I just got to put in my membership number here. And then traditionally, we would also include another piece of identifier like a birth date or last name. But for my case, I'll keep it simple and I'll just have membership ID required here. Oop, we can see I got an email about my previous order. We'll close that up. It's distracting. So here Happy can purchase his entry reservation time. We could also offer guest passes in a similar fashion to what I showed you, as well as maybe members get early access to events that go on sale early using those sales channel reservations like Matt was showing earlier. What we'll do is we'll just add our member admission here. Say we want that 5 o'clock show again. Add it to our cart. Then we get our add-ons here. So if I do want to bite this time, just for fun, we'll take the car parking, we'll get the hand sanitizer. I'll just add those in. Now notice at my cart, I did automatically include a Roundup donation. So that was added automatically for me, as well as my zero price membership admission, car parking, hand sanitizer, all added in here. I could, of course, remove the donation if I wanted to. But Happy is satisfied with the selection, and he's going to continue. And then here on the checkout page, again, I'm only offering mobile delivery. I think this is helpful, number one, because it's less waste, right, which might serve, your mission statement, but it's also a benefit because your staff doesn't need to take anything from the guest or from the member when they come for admission. They can just scan it right off their phone. Super secure credit card number here for you guys. All right, and now with the order completed, Happy has instant access to his ticket, right? By clicking this View Mobile Ticket button, he can save this to his phone and easily tap here when he does get to the admission control point to switch from his admission ticket to parking. Well, actually, it would probably be in the reverse order, and then the hand sanitizer redemption product. So you just saw 2 ways members or season pass holders can easily schedule their arrivals. One using the eGalaxy Pass portal, and the other was using the eGalaxy web store, but just for creating a pass required or members only area. Randy, do we have any questions?
We just keep having a continuation of questions coming in, kind of on a variety of subjects, but particular for memberships, I'm not seeing anything specific. I do want to let you know if you do use joint memberships, the second option is most likely the option that's going to be best for you. That will help you out. So joint memberships and the membership portal, which you saw previously, they're not every instances allow those 2 products to work together. So it's just something I want to bring up. But I think that's it. Matthew, do you have any questions that you want to move to now?
I don't think so. I think that we've been answering many of them as they've been coming up or have been addressed in the content.
Well, awesome. So we're going to kind of wind this down. I apologize in advance for going a little longer, but of course the content allowed us to keep moving. We did see some fine questions coming in. I do want to give anybody that's still listening, we have over 300 panel or attendees. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask now, this is a great time to ask it. We would do our best to answer anything that might come our way. All right, so we do have one thing that we want to end with. As we're continuing to move forward with coming up with the best content, we are still beginning to understand, or we're continuing to understand what is it that our customers, our guests really expect from us. So we have a poll. I would love for you, everybody, to take a few minutes to answer this poll. What is the biggest question that you have about your guests when you could reopen? So what we're really looking for is some insight from you is what information would you want to get from your guests? Do your guests need safety? Do your guests want to have a VIP experience? We've got a lot of questions today about dynamic pricing. Will your guests be willing to pay more money for a more customized experience? So this is a little bit of time, if you don't mind, just filling in some answers there. That would be super great because it's going to help us understand how we might better reach out to our customers and our guests to deliver the best level of content for you. So that poll is running in the background. And then at the very end, I just want to give you a little bit of an update on what is next with our webinar series. We will meet again next week, next Wednesday, to continue our conversation on capacity management. And we're going to take a deeper dive and focus next week about managing capacity inside your attraction. So we did hear a lot of questions and content about your retail shops and some other locations that you might have. So next week we're going to shift and have a little more focus on the inside of your attractions. So I definitely want to make sure that you're available to attend that. If you would like to assist us and join our panel, we would love to have you. Just let us know in some of the comments. I'm just going to share my screen here. Not letting me share my screen, so I apologize, everybody. Let us know in the comments about how we can. Thank you, Bill. Bill's let me share my screen here. Here we go. Oop, I'm going to jump way ahead now. If you are interested in joining us as a panelist, we definitely want to get more information. Go ahead and email marketing@gatewayticketing.com. Of course, register for the next webinar next week. I actually have a special slide for you. If you click on this QR code, you can jump right to our webinar for next week. So we're going to have a conversation about optimizing the capacity managed experience inside your attraction. So please join us next week with that little QR code. If you're not receiving our marketing information, please email us here. We understand that many of your staff members might not be receiving company emails during this time period, so you're welcome to share this with any of your team members that are unfortunately furloughed right now. Our goal is to continue to have community together and share ideas and thoughts with staff members that might not be working physically for you right now, but they're welcome to join us on these webinars. Their comments and questions are always welcome. So thank you guys very much for joining us today. Our webinar will be up on Friday on our Gateway Ticketing Community Forum, so you guys can watch the webinar or share it with some other folks. But of course, stay safe. We appreciate all of you. We're all in this together, and we're happy to be here, so just let us know how we can help. Have a great day, everybody.